All right, so in simplest terms, decolonization refers to the fact that as Indigenous peoples, prior to Canada, we all had our own self-governing authorities. We all had our nations, we all had our borders, we all had our leaders, our governments, our systems of how we related to each other and to our lands. And so decolonization is the act of removing the imposed colonial authority over top of those systems. Because we're still trying to take care of our lands, we're still trying to take care of our people. And within the context of recent history, we're trying to take care of all the people who live on our lands, not just ourselves, so that we can enjoy them for future generations.
So you would get rid of the Indian Act, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and would you be, how would sovereign nations work? Let's say you're like the nation you're from. How would that coexist in Canada?
So, we've existed on our own for a very long time, and what that would look like ultimately is, the control of our lands, the control of our resources. That would mean removing the neoliberal economy from our territories, so actually focusing on trying to develop economies that allow us to feed ourselves, enjoy a comfortable lifestyle, while not totally degrading the land in order to profit a few people overseas. So it's just responsible development. It doesn't mean that we're opposed to any and all work on our territories, except that we just want to have control over it so that it can last indefinitely. Because right now, what we're looking at is an economy that's highly destructive, an economy that doesn't really listen to the people or hear our concerns. And what we're trying to do is come up with creative solutions in order to, develop that any new type of economy, based on all of the intelligence, all the people on our lands, all of our collective, memory and collective intelligence, in order to define how we want to live as human beings.
There's a lot of corruption in the First Nation system right now, isn't there?
That's
like at the top level, just like in the outside of it too.
That's exactly it. So right now,
chiefs are getting bought out.
So in order to explain that, that's an important point, because right now most Indigenous nations, we've had our governments replaced by the Band Council model, which is under the Indian Act.
Yes.
And so the Indian Act is this huge monolithic structure that's designed to govern our lives from cradle to grave. So even back in the day, we weren't allowed to leave the reservation without passes. Our children were taken away, our languages were removed. We weren't allowed to gather in groups larger than 5. We had our governments outlawed, and it was illegal for us to get lawyers to pursue any of these within the Canadian court systems. So the Indian Act is a huge business for the Canadian economy, because the bureaucracy itself sucks up more money than any of the nations on their own do. And there's so much money that comes out of our lands from the territories, and a lot of it is based on very corrupt relations between the bureaucracy, the Indian Act, the band councils, and industry themselves, without heeding the voices of the people or the original governments that were forcibly displaced by violence and the RCMP.
So what would be your relationship to the rest of Canada as a sovereign nation?
So right now, the bare minimum that we're asking is for diplomacy, for discussion, for an understanding of what nation-to-nation relationships look like. Because right now, a lot of people are under the impression that Indigenous nations have been wholly absorbed within Canada, and that we're merely an ethnic minority, when in reality we continue to assert ourselves as sovereign nations. So that doesn't mean that we're trying to kick everyone out. It doesn't mean that we're coming into conflict. All it means is we're asking for civil discussion, we're asking for respect, and we're asking for everyone to sit out at the table so we can figure out how to move forward in everyone's best interest, and especially the best interest of the land itself.
Yeah, good stuff. And you're from northern BC, right?
Yeah, I'm from Gitxsan country, from the village of Untitled, also known as Kispiox.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that today. I appreciate it.
Anytime.